All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to completely demystify the somewhat intimidating jargon of digital mobile radio. If you've ever looked at DMR programming and just felt totally overwhelmed by all the acronyms, believe me, you're not alone. We're going to break it all down into logical, easily understandable building blocks. By the time we wrap up, you'll know exactly how this incredible technology actually ticks. Okay, let's dive into this with a pretty fascinating puzzle. How does DMR manage to fit two completely separate, simultaneous conversations onto a single radio frequency? Think about it. In the old analog world, one frequency meant one conversation. If two people keyed up at the exact same time, you just got a mess of interference. So how exactly does digital pull off this magic trick? Section 1. The magic of DMR bandwidth. So to really understand the foundation here, we have to look back to the mid-2000s, when DMR originated as a commercial protocol. It used a modulation technique called 4FSK. And here's the very first piece of the puzzle. A standard DMR channel uses a really tight bandwidth of 12.5 kilohertz. But the real magic, it isn't just the width of the channel, it's how DMR utilizes the time within that space through something called time division multiple access, or TDMA. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how it works. Instead of broadcasting a continuous, unbroken stream of audio like older analog systems do, TDMA takes your transmitted digital signal and chops it up into these rapid, alternating 30-millisecond segments. It effectively turns that single 12.5 kilohertz channel into a two-lane digital highway. Section 2. Mastering time slots. So we've got these incredibly fast, 30-millisecond slices of data literally zipping through the air. How on earth are they managed so conversations don't just crash into each other? Well, think of the local repeater as a highly organized traffic cop, or maybe a bouncer at a club. It synchronizes these alternating slices into two distinct paths, time slot 1 and time slot 2. Because of this exact, precise synchronization, two totally independent conversations can weave together on the exact same frequency without ever stepping on each other's toes. Now, since these two slots act like completely separate channels, repeater owners use them to organize network traffic efficiently. While the hard rules can vary, there's a general etiquette you'll see everywhere. Time slot 1 is typically reserved for wide area, national, or even international traffic, like the worldwide talk group. Time slot 2, on the other hand, is usually kept wide open for local and regional conversations. This way, local users aren't suddenly blocked out by a wave of global chatter. Section 3. Your unique radio ID. All right, now that we've got a handle on the network infrastructure, let's look at the absolute prerequisite for you to even press the push-to-talk button. You absolutely must have a unique radio ID. Remember, your radio doesn't just transmit your voice, it's transmitting data. That includes a unique 6- or 7-digit numerical ID that you have to register for online. It essentially acts as your digital fingerprint, and it's permanently linked to your government-issued call sign and your geographic location. So, the crucial point is this: you literally cannot just make up a random number. If you attempt to access a network-connected repeater with a default dummy ID, say 123456, the repeater's gateway controller is going to immediately deny your routing request. It acts a whole lot like a bounced IP address on a computer network. You simply will not get through. No way. Which brings us to Section 4, access keys, or color codes. Okay, so you have your unique ID locked in. Now you need a physical key to unlock your local repeater. In the DMR world, we use access keys known as color codes. Now, despite the highly creative and colorful name, a color code is literally just a digital number ranging from 0 to 15. It functions exactly like an analog PL tone to prevent interference between overlapping repeaters. Basically, if your radio isn't programmed with the exact right color code, the repeater is simply going to ignore your transmission entirely. Next up, Section 5, virtual chat rooms, also known as talk groups. Okay, think about it. You've got your ID, you've got the exact color code, but how does your voice actually find the specific people you're trying to talk to? Well, that happens through software routing, specifically talk groups. A talk group is essentially a shared digital chat room, and it's identified by a numeric ID, like talkgroup 91 for worldwide. When you transmit to a talk group, you're making what's called a group call. It's a multi-point broadcast, meaning absolutely anyone in the world tuned to that specific ID is going to hear your transmission. Now, you should know that not all talk groups behave the exact same way on your local repeater. Static talk groups are permanently linked by the repeater owner. They're continuously broadcasting, so you can just passively listen by tuning in.
Dynamic talk groups, however, are on demand. To hear them, you actually have to briefly press your PTT button to tell the network to link that chat room to your repeater. And to save precious network bandwidth, these dynamic groups will automatically unlink after about 10 to 15 minutes of local inactivity.
Section 6. Private calls and individual IDs.
So group calls are great for those massive chat rooms. But what if you want to route a transmission to just a single person? While a group call is a one-to-many broadcast, a private call is strictly point-to-point. If you know your buddy's 7-digit DMR ID, you can actually use their unique radio ID as the destination contact in your radio, instead of a talk group. It acts almost exactly like a direct telephone call straight to their radio. But wait, here is a very, very important etiquette check. While your radio is technically capable of doing this for voice chats, it is heavily discouraged in amateur radio. Why? Because a private call ties up an entire 30-millisecond time slot on the repeater just for your one-on-one conversation. You're effectively locking everyone else out of that resource. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we actually use private calls in everyday DMR operation. We use them to issue network commands. For example, if you want to test how you sound on the network, you send a private call to ID 9990, that's the parrot service, and it simply echoes your audio right back to you. Or, if you need to manually disconnect a dynamic talk group, you just send a private call to ID 4000. It's a really clever use of the one-to-one routing system. Finally, bringing it all together, the code plug. Let's move to and see how this all builds, because we've covered a ton of isolated concepts today. How do all these digital building blocks stack up? Well, they form a functional setup called a code plug, a precise 3-step matrix. Step 1, input your registered radio ID. Step 2, build your address book by adding contacts, which are your talk groups and those private IDs we just talked about. And step 3, create channels. This is the big one. This is where you bind everything together. You pair the frequencies with the right color code, you assign a time slot, and then you link it to the specific contact you want to reach. And guys, that is the core logic of digital mobile radio right there. Once you understand these building blocks, the jargon just fades away and this incredible world of global communication completely opens up to you. Thank you so much for learning with me today. So, with your brand new understanding of code plugs, time slots, and talk groups, I have to ask, what part of the world is your very first digital transmission going to reach? Grab your radio, fire up that programming software, and go find out.